Your purpose in life is to lead, inspire, and empower. If you create oil paintings, if you're an artist, there is always a phase in the painting that's ugly. For the person who's new to creating art, it is the most powerful tool for self-empowerment, and it is the greatest validation of bravery you'll ever get.
So we have only just met, but I've discovered that you arrived here in 2021 with a background that would be nothing like what you are doing right now. So I suppose my first question is really, can you give me a little bit of a history? How did we get to where we are now? And what is it that you currently do?
Yeah, so as a child, my mum was very into us going to art classes, and that was very much part of my upbringing. And I did art until we finished school, so the equivalent of leaving cert here. And then I did a little bit of painting for a project linked to the first sexual offences court ever in the world. And that was at the Wynberg Magistrate Court in Ireland, in South Africa. My best friend headed that up, and we had a child-friendly room for the children to give testimony so that they wouldn't be frightened. And I did a whole lot of artwork for that. But other than that, I really hadn't done any art until about 2009. I did some work with some acrylics. It was really bad. I put it away. I started karate with my kids. Went on a bit of a thing to get a black belt in karate. So at 45, I got my black belt in karate, as one does.
As one does. Yeah.
While running 3 busy B&Bs, and we had 15 staff. We had international hotel school students. We worked 7 days a week, but in between we did this. But eventually, I knew I wasn't going to be going on to a second dan or anything like that. So I decided to take up an oil painting for beginners class with one of the mums at our kids' school. The backdrop, though, was that all the B&Bs, which we'd had at that point, this was 2016, we'd had for nearly 14 years, they were all art-themed. And each of the rooms was named after an artist, and I had prints of that artist's work in the room, and the whole decor was centered then around the artwork in the room. So yeah, we had these art-themed B&Bs, and I started doing this oil painting class. And then while we waited for guests, because we were waiting for them to come for breakfast, you're waiting for them to check out, waiting for them to check in, then they haven't left. And so you spend a lot of time waiting. So while I waited, I painted.
Okay.
Obviously, I checked the rooms and cooked the dinners and did the shopping and all those things and the marketing.
Everything didn't fall into disrepair.
Stop. You'll be painting now. So, yeah, it was really cool. I had a pull-out workbench. I had a pull-out easel. And I could see the dining room. And it was a 5-star B&B. So, we were really hands-on. But while I waited, I painted. And it turned out I was quite good at it. It was oil painting specifically. And I was really very prolific. And one day a UK guest said to me, "Do you sell them?" Now, of course, we're sitting in Durban in South Africa. I said, "Of course I sell them." So yeah, before I knew it, I was like figuring out how to price paintings. And then I set up a gallery in the main 5-star B&B. So I listed it as a contemporary gallery on the equivalent of Visual Artists Island in South Africa, Vansa. So I was quite cheeky. By that point, I was painting with a group of practicing artists at a studio called Studio 3. And I had my first solo exhibition with them, which opened on the 7th of March, 2020. And we know what happened on the 15th of March, 2020.
That's not a good time.
It was a wonderful opening, and it was a super first week. And then it all came to a grinding halt. And these 3 very busy B&Bs came to grinding halt. And anyway, fast forward a little while on, we said, all right, this time next year we'll be living in Ireland. So my dad was Irish, my mum was Welsh. So luckily I'd done my foreign birth registration and the children's, and we had 3 out of 4 Irish passports. So that was great. And we were able to do it. So yeah, my son and I came first, and my husband and daughter followed. And yeah, it was a natural thing to carry on with hospitality here. And I carried on painting in the background while being a people and culture manager for a 4-star hotel. That was really busy, and it was a wonderful job, very stressful, but I still managed to paint in the background. And I started doing things like the Kinsale Art Weekend that's currently on, and Ballymaloog Art Festival, and slowly but surely building it up. The hotel I worked for was very into having artists in residence, and they'd done a newly refurbished back of house area for the employees. So I convinced the GM that I should be the back of house artist. So it was beautiful. They spent €750,000 on this thing.
Wow.
And Emma Jacobs' art was lined up on all the walls,
Incredible.
which was amazing. And I got a sale off it from one of the Reunion Island waiters, which was so cool. Anyway, so yeah, that was sort of how it started. And then I just knew that if I didn't step out and try and pursue this full time, it would, the time was ticking. So in April 24, I left my full-time job and my full-time salary. So that was a thing. And yeah, so went out on my own and started working quite a lot with the local enterprise offices. And while I didn't need help with running a business and how to be an entrepreneur and how to set up a business and all that stuff, and I'm very fortunate I have an accountant husband.
That's
But I needed network and content, contacts and context, and to find a sense of place that wasn't linked to hospitality. So I had my first solo exhibition at the Hideout Cafe and Gallery in Cork City, and that was amazing. It felt very much like the opening of my first solo exhibition in South Africa, and the fact that my first solo exhibition in Cork felt the same, and there was just amazing support. Like, so many people came, and I sold nicely and got good press coverage, and it was I've said it's like bookends that marked this horrific time.
Yeah, this terrible time in the middle that we all want to forget about. Yeah.
And immigrating in your 50s is not for sissies, and it was separated from my husband for 7 months, and it was hard. So I've had, I think, 5 solo exhibitions in total, including the Hideout Cafe, Cork Airport, the Grey Heron, Kinsale Library, and I was the artist in residence at the Address Hotel in Cork City. So that's been really great, and I was invited to exhibit in Navigation Square 1 as well, in their beautiful lobby as well. So yeah, I've really been fortunate. Luck is where preparation and opportunity meet.
Yeah. Fortunate is only so. Luck will only take you so far.
Exactly. So I've really worked hard to build contacts and to understand the landscape of it. And it's been a really good exercise to be part of the West Cork Collective, which has been really a fascinating exercise in creativity, in community, in together is better. And I've just met the most amazing artists and makers. And it's been an opportunity for me not only to exhibit, but to have a retail space and to teach my oil painting for beginners classes as well.
Amazing. You are not short of things going on at the moment. I suppose there's so many different directions we could go there, but I think the most interesting one to maybe anybody that is kind of watching, that's maybe looking to follow a similar path to you, they're doing something they love, but they haven't taken the leap, as it were. How do you do that? Because that's such a massive, like, even yourself, like, it's such a huge thing, especially if you have a stable job, you have a stable salary, you have a family that you need to think of. What really gave you that feeling, I have to do this? Or what steps did you take in to prepare in order to be able to do it?
A lot of the preparation was still while I was working full time. So putting building blocks in place to start building a bridge between full-time salary to, I don't want to say nothing, but to the prospect of having to start from scratch. And also being quite mindful that it does take time, and especially as a foreigner in a new country, that takes even longer because you have no connections. So a lot of what I was doing was, working through social media, making sure my profile was prevalent, making sure my LinkedIn profile was good. And obviously I had a lot of hotel contacts. I belonged to the HR forum. And if someone's thinking about going out to do their own business, then they need to understand what business is, not what their hobby to become a business is.
Yeah.
So they need to understand how to keep basic books. They need to understand what the legalities are. They need to know how to start a business, how to register a business, how to register for revenue, how to do your social media, how to sort out your production, how to keep track of your work, how to keep track of your stock. I'm terrible at it. How to work with suppliers, how to work with the public, how to deal with the paperwork that's linked to setting up websites, setting up contracts, setting up deals with clients. And then in my case, how to work with galleries and how to work with wholesale deals if you're going to go into the prints or the cards thing. So there's so much more to it. Like practically, I don't spend that much time painting because the business is me. And, I'm fortunate that I have an accountant in-house. But the rest falls under me, and I'm assembling my prints, and I'm going to the shops to buy my canvases. So that takes time, and I think there's a lot of support in Ireland for it, which has been really amazing. And so I did a couple of things. I've worked with the local enterprise offices. They have amazing courses, mentors. They really are very, very supportive. And then I did something called the Art of Business and Business of Art course at Future Kinsale.
Okay.
And at K-Works. And that was really a starting point to start thinking about creative business, not just business. And then building up relationships with other artists so that I could then get connections to suppliers that I would need, and then starting to make those appointments. So it's about understanding the business, but then also understanding the relationships that are necessary to support you in what you need.
So it's all very good advice. It's just unfortunate. It's probably not what anybody wants to hear, is it? Everybody wants to be able to do their creative thing.
Yeah.
And that be like, okay, yes, I'm going to do this creative thing. I'm going to sell it. But in actual fact, there's an awful lot that has to go on behind the scenes in order to make this work.
I'll give you a parallel example. I had been an exchange student from South Africa to Luxembourg. And I went as an 18-year-old, and when I got there, nobody understood my sense of humor. They didn't understand the terminology we used for school. They certainly hadn't played field hockey. They hadn't been a prefect. They didn't have an honours blazer. They weren't in the debate. They hadn't done all of these things, and they had 10 compulsory subjects, which we didn't have. So I learned from that exercise that I was going to, when I came to Ireland, have to put in place things to build a new identity in Ireland, because I'd been through that already of having to build a new identity in Luxembourg. And it's a really hard thing to do. It's like a mum only knows their child from the minute they're born, but vice versa too. They don't know you before they were born. They only know you from this point on. And it's the same when you arrive in Ireland. People in Ireland only know you from this point on. They don't necessarily know or understand what's happened before. So there's very much a sense of reinvention and reestablishing your sense of identity. And because you've had that experience before, it prepares you for what's coming. So giving people the advice of learn a bit about business before you take the leap to open your own business, while it's not what we want to hear, it's the things that will make it easier to not only survive, but thrive ultimately as well.
So I just want to circle back around to community, because it's something you've mentioned multiple times and something that seems very important to you and to your work. And then on top of that, you're involved in so many different areas of a community that you haven't grown up in. You've come and joined the community and you've made yourself an active member, and particularly where we are right now. Can Can you just speak to maybe the importance of that to art, your art, and also what you've got involved in and how maybe that's influenced you?
Yeah, so one of the strategies that I took to bridge full-time employment to being a full-time professional artist was my background's in learning and development before hospitality. And so I do a bit of work for Cork Education and Training Board. And I really believe that I have a lot to give in terms of leadership skills, in terms of my knowledge on hospitality, and just, generally how to communicate better and treat people better. So I'm actively involved in that, more as a token of giving back to the industry that gave me 23 years of livelihood, and I really enjoy it. Uh, Also, more people get to hear about it, but I guess there's that.
That's always a benefit, isn't
Not
it?
self-serving at all. Yeah, so that I really enjoy that, and that's been a bit of rent money, which has kept a base. I volunteer as a board member for an organisation called EIL AFS Intercultural Learning Ireland. They have a partnership with an organisation called AFS, and that's the group that I went on exchange with. So I kind of, it's been something really that changed the trajectory of my life and how I relate to other nationalities and diversity and active global citizenship. And it really has put me in a different space that I would have been had I not had that experience. So I feel, quite aligned with the mission. And it's really something that I feel strongly about, especially with the changing demographic in Ireland. There are more and more nationalities coming in the citizenship ceremonies that happen with naturalization to become Irish citizens. There are on average 140 countries represented there. And there's a strong top 10 of countries that are there. South Africa's number 7, by the way. So yeah, I watch that kind of thing, and it's because my lens looks at it that way. So I volunteer as a board member there, and then I've been involved with the West Cork Collective since its inception. I was one of the original founding members. And the collective where we're sitting right now is a really important group of 60 artists and makers who are from in and around the Kinsale, Ballinspittle area. We live in Ballinhasig. And it is a space for people to exhibit, to sell, and to teach. And it's really been a fantastic experience being involved with that. And then in terms of broader community, I'm doing my master's in arts and engagement, and that's been really very interesting as a learning curve. Well, first of all, to go back to university after 32 years has been fun, and now with the internet, that's cool. So it's been really very interesting learning about socially engaged art practice and the importance of art in both well-being, but also in terms of engaging with communities. And it's been fascinating hearing about all the different research projects. And moving now into year 2, we're going to have to do our own research projects. And I'll be working with South Africans naturalizing to become Irish citizens.
Amazing.
Your man at home is one of them. So it's really been an interesting journey to learn more about the theory behind all of these socially engaged art practices, group theory, metaphor meaning, and all of the good things that go with that. And the engagement with that artist community now has been something really important for me because I don't have a formal art qualification yet. It's on the way. It's imminent. So for me, it was really important because I'm now a full-time professional artist that I should have a qualification in the field. So being at the Crawford College of Art and Design, has been really, really instrumental in getting me into that space and putting me firmly in that lane. So you'll see I'm just sort of edging further and further away and into the art and my own art practice, into socially engaged art, into community art, into teaching art. And what I'll be moving into in the second year now is into an elective of art and well-being. So looking how art can be used to help people in the community in a way that will help and empower them to live better and have better well-being.
See, this is something that when I was doing my research, I do research these things.
Yes.
I found incredibly interesting about you, because I'm very in the space of talking to a lot of people about social media and about how AI is influencing that and things like that. That's very much an area of interest and expertise for me. And I find it interesting that as everything moves towards digital, so we've got digital art on screens, portfolios are on screens, and people can generate art images in seconds with AI, that you've taken, in my view, a completely different approach. As art is, you can correct me if I'm putting words in your mouth here, but art is inherently something that needs to be done with groups, collectives, with people, and it can actually have, it's not just a piece of art, it can have a very positive impact on people's lives. So I suppose within all that, the question is, how do you see it? How do you see your art and what you do versus this move into social media and AI? How do they work together, or how do you keep them completely apart?
So yesterday I was in the Temperance Hall at the craft market that happens every week, and I was invited to participate in the craft market, and I had the CTO, Chief Technical Officer of a Silicon Valley software development company, come and chat with me. And he really enjoyed my art, and we got chatting, and his observation was that there will be more and more demand for art made by humans because it's made by hand and it's made by mind and it's made by love. And that hand, heart, and head kind of element that is part of creating a piece of work is something that cannot be replicated in a machine. And therefore, it will hold a different value because it's artisanal. That being said, I personally love AI. I think it's fantastic. Like, I throw questions in there and stuff comes out. And it reminds me, my dad became the longest serving Attorney General in South Africa. And he told me years and years ago, he said, "Do you know, my secretary can take a whole paragraph and move it to another page?" And I kind of feel a little bit about AI like that. It's just like, wow, I just can't believe it does this. So what art does is it creates something of beauty and joy, or it tells a story in a way that is subjective to the viewer. And for the person creating art, it is something to hold and behold. For the person who's new to creating art, it is the most powerful tool for self-empowerment. And it is the greatest validation of bravery you'll ever get. Because if I have mostly ladies come through my 6-week class, and at the beginning there's fear and vulnerability and doubt and comparison and all these things that we do. And will I be good enough? And the insecurity that goes with that. And at the end of it, you have an oil painting that you've painted yourself that looks, everybody has their own. It's magic. You know, it's just the most empowering thing you can witness, that you have facilitated the space and the process and you've taken them through a step by step. But it's less about the end painting. It's about the engagement with the process. The as Brene Brown says, you know, being in the arena, showing up.
Okay.
I mean, I love Brene, but that's what it is. It's about being brave and it's about being vulnerable. And you can't have courage without vulnerability, and that takes some doing. So I really, really enjoy that. One of my art mentors, she's now 92, a lady called Shirley Howells, but still in regular touch. She said, your purpose in life is to lead, inspire, and empower. And I really feel that's very much who I am. The paintings are a mechanism of it. And what I try and do is, through teaching people to paint, I'm trying to teach them to see the beauty around them and to notice things that they would never have noticed before. like we say 50 shades of green, but there's 150 shades of green, especially in Ireland. So, suddenly they'll come back in the next week and I go, do you know, I'd never noticed all the different shades of green between here and my house, and that's really, it teaches people to be more present, to be more observant, to be more grateful, to be more aware of creating something, especially in the space of other people. So it's social engagement as well, and it's just really powerful. Something I really enjoy very, very much.
And that whole process, of course, as much as you enjoy throwing a question into AI and getting your results, that whole process is something that can't be replicated with a prompt. So for you, it's as much about the process for the person as it is the end result, like you say.
And what's really interesting is if you create oil paintings, if you're an artist, there is always a phase in the painting that's ugly. It's like, ooh, like how am I ever going to pull this out of this mess? And I think it takes some patience and some tolerance to trust the process. And we're all in a rush and we're all in a hurry and we're all on our phones. And the fact that process has to be followed, you learn the rules and then you figure out how to push them and change them and whatever. But the process will get you to a beautiful painting. It will get you to the end. And I think that's something useful as a life lesson, that if we follow certain things in our lives, we will have a positive result, and that's cool. That's cool to see that replicated in a painting.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then obviously that's that process. But for me, and I'd say for a lot of people, the big problem is the first step.
To sign up.
How do you get people to take that leap? Or what would you say to somebody who's there going, no, like they've thought about it, but not for me? What would you get to get somebody over that leap, to sign up, to turn up and to put that first mark on the campus?
Yeah. It's interesting because we paint here in the collective, people will come in and see what's going on. They go, oh, what's going on here? Yeah. And then one of the students will say, oh, this is great crack. You have to sign up. It's amazing, So that's part of it, is just for people to observe other people learning and enjoying it and, seeing that it's a safe place, Psychological safety is a real thing, It's people get scared that they're going to be criticized or, that it's not going to be good enough. And I think one of the things that we've seen with the ladies that have come through the program is that first step is the big thing. And invariably, I land up with people who are at some kind of what about me question phase of their lives. So
okay,
either, they're a new mum, or the kids are about to leave the house, or they've gone through some kind of health scare, or they've got divorced or bereaved, or, whatever it may be, retirement coming soon. So it's like, okay, well, now it's my turn. What do I get to do? And
you see,
I very often will find women usually in that space.
okay.
And that's usually when they put their hands up. So I try and fish in that space. It's an important space, especially women who've gone through menopause. It's a time now to like regather, regroup, refigure out, reinvent, and to do so with such a wonderful medium of oil, and to create with other people. Like it's magic. It gives people a new sense of purpose and a new sense of, it's a new identity. Like I'm now known as the artist amongst the South African community. In South Africa, I was the B&B lady.
Yeah.
So it's like, it becomes part of your identity as opposed to your profession. And that's really powerful. But yeah, whether you paint for 6 weeks and then you never do it again or whatever, it's just the fact that you've tried something new, I think, is really powerful.
I find that interesting that I feel like we've come almost full circle on this discussion, because we're now talking about people discovering identity through art and changing their identity as they move through a new phase in their life. do you see the similarity to exactly what you did at the beginning there? That's your story, is it not?
Absolutely. So the power of reinvention, in fact, the Department of Social Protection invited me as their keynote speaker for an International Women's Day event to talk specifically around reinvention. So how do you reinvent yourself, and how do you navigate through the different chapters of your life in a way that is meaningful and has purpose? So reinvention, people think they have to do the same thing they've always been doing, and that's not the case. And this idea of putting building blocks in place to put you into a position to transition from one thing to the next gives you options. So if you decide to stay where you've been working all the time and do something as a hobby or part-time, or you decide, okay, I want to migrate to that, then that's where I'll go.
And like you say, with every step that comes along and every thing that you do, a word that you've repeated a few times is bravery.
Yes.
Like, so it's, even though you want to get to here, every step is a little bit of bravery to take that step, and you have to have the courage every time to move forwards.
One of my favorite quotes is, "Be brave. If you can't be, pretend to be. Nobody can tell the difference." And, I don't want to say I'm the great pretender, but, we all worry about it. We all worry about imposter syndrome. Will I be good enough? We all get that. And people say to me, how do you deal with other artists and so much competition? And I go, the same way I did when we had B&Bs. I don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Because there's absolutely nothing I can do about it. All I can worry about is me being the best artist I can be, to make sure that I'm furthering my lifelong education, that I'm making sure that I'm keeping on top of things, that I'm engaging with the art community, that I'm exhibiting, that I'm pushing myself forward. That's what I can do.
I think I've squeezed so much information out of you there, so I do thank you very much for your time. But before we go, if you'd like to just maybe, I'm hoping there's some people that are going to watch this that are going to want to look up Emma Jacobs. So where can people find you? And maybe a few words on the lovely pieces of work that everyone's been looking at for the last while.
Thank you. So I'll talk to the camera.
Talk to the camera. Talk to this one right here.
All right. So I'm Emma Jacobs. My website is emmajacobsart.com. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram as @EmmaJacobsArt. I'm on LinkedIn as Emma McNally Jacobs, and I have a page for my art as well. So around us, we're sitting in the beautiful gallery of the West Cork Collective. I have some sheep that have come from Crossbarry, which is close to where we live. One of my students, her cousin owns the sheep, of course. We have beautiful foxglove. This was the very first flower, Irish flower I noticed. We were visiting my cousin in Kerry, and I came back to her and said, what's this beautiful purple flower that we do not have in South Africa? So yeah, it was really lovely. This one is of Grand Parade, people going to grab a cup of coffee. So this is a very typical scene when I'm going to grab a coffee, because our campus is at 46 Grand Parade where I'm doing my master's. So that just, and through, I love painting paintings through flowers, because you know what? Flowers are beautiful and color is my vibe. and this was very shortly after we arrived in Cork. We went through to Cove, same sort of thing. I love painting the beautiful towns, the villages. My favorite thing to paint is portraits, actually.
Interesting. Okay.
Big portraits. And I have a Think Big project that I'm working on related to immigration and naturalization, where I want to do a project of 10 big portraits representing one of each of the top 10 countries naturalizing as Irish citizens.
Amazing.
Because visually, demographically, it's going to be just so cool. And I wanted to land up in the Irish immigration offices of the Department of Justice, because my Irish immigrant father ended up being the longest serving Attorney General in the Department of Justice in South Africa. And he was from Dublin, and the office is in Dublin. So I think it would be a lovely full circle.
That would be fantastic. I would love to see that. And when that's done, please do let me know. I would love to see that.
I'm putting it out there.
There we
Put
go.
it into the universe.
It's into the universe. I did an interview a little while ago with a UI UX designer who has the philosophy of make it exist and then make it good. And his first step of making it exist is putting it out into the world. So I hope that also works for you. Emma Jacobs, thank you very much for your time. It's much
Thank you so
appreciated.
much.
Thank you.
Lovely.